My mother destroyed our family with a single lie that lasted 12 years, and I only discovered it because of an accidentally opened bank statement that fell out of her purse during what was supposed to be our perfect Thanksgiving dinner. Let me paint you a picture of the perfect American family facade. My name is Iris, I'm 32, and for over a decade I believed I was the family disappointment while my younger sister Sarah was the golden child. Mom always said I was too practical for choosing accounting over something more creative and inspiring like Sarah's fashion influencer career. Dad would nod along, praising Sarah's Instagram posts while barely glancing at my CPA certification hanging on the wall. The irony wasn't lost on me that the boring accountant was the one struggling to make ends meet while the creative genius seemed to afford designer everything. But family dynamics are complicated, right? I told myself that maybe some people are just naturally luckier, more charismatic, more deserving of good things. This Thanksgiving was supposed to be special. Sarah had just hit 2 million followers and landed a collaboration with a major cosmetics brand. Mom had been planning this elaborate dinner for weeks, going on and on about celebrating Sarah's success. The dining room looked like something out of a magazine, complete with hand-arranged centerpieces and gold-rimmed china that only came out for the most important occasions. I arrived early to help with preparations, carrying my contribution of store-bought pumpkin pie, feeling inadequate next to the artisanal everything Mom had prepared. That's when it happened. Mom was rushing around the kitchen, and her oversized designer purse, a gift from Sarah, knocked over a stack of mail on the counter. Papers scattered everywhere, and as I bent to help collect them, one particular envelope caught my eye. It was a bank statement, but not just any bank statement. It was from an account I'd never heard of, with my name on it. My full name. Iris Margaret Thompson. But the address was Mom's, and the signature on the statements was definitely hers. My hands started shaking as I read the numbers. This account had been receiving monthly deposits of $1,500 for the past 12 years. $1,500. Every single month. The same amount my grandmother had promised to send me for graduate school and to help me get established in my career. The same money I'd been told had stopped coming after Grandma's passing 3 years ago because the estate was complicated. But here it was, still coming in. Still being deposited. Into an account I didn't know existed. Into an account my mother had been managing without my knowledge. The deposits weren't random either. They came from Grandma's trust fund, exactly as she'd intended. But there was more. The withdrawal history showed massive transfers, thousands of dollars at a time, all going to another account. An account that, based on the routing number, I was pretty sure belonged to Sarah. I felt like I was going to throw up. $1,500 a month for 12 years. That's over $200,000. $200,000 that was supposed to help me build my life, pay off student loans, maybe even buy a house. Instead, it had been secretly funding my sister's lifestyle while I worked 3 jobs and lived in a studio apartment with a broken heater. The worst part? I'd been grateful. Actually grateful that my family supported me emotionally even though they couldn't help financially. I'd thanked my mother countless times for being understanding about my money struggles. I'd apologized for not being able to contribute more to family gatherings. I'd felt guilty for not being as successful as Sarah, not knowing that my own inheritance was literally paying for her success. When everyone arrived for dinner, I was in a complete daze. Dad walked in carrying a bottle of expensive wine, talking about how proud he was of both his daughters but spending the next 20 minutes asking Sarah about her latest brand deals. My aunt and uncle arrived next, immediately gravitating towards Sarah to hear about her exciting life while I sat there, bank statement folded in my pocket, feeling like I was living in an alternate reality. The conversation during dinner was the usual pattern. Sarah talked about her recent trip to Paris for a photo shoot, casually mentioning the 5-star hotel and Michelin-starred restaurants. Mom beamed with pride, asking detailed questions about every luxury experience. Dad discussed the business aspects of influencer marketing with the enthusiasm he'd never shown for my accounting work. I barely touched my food. Every word felt like a personal insult now that I knew the truth. When Saria mentioned her new apartment with the walk-in closet and marble countertops, I almost laughed out loud. Of course she could afford marble countertops. She'd been living off my inheritance for over a decade. The breaking point came when Mom stood up to make a toast. She raised her glass and started talking about how proud she was of both her daughters, how we'd each found our own paths to success. She talked about Saria's creativity and business acumen, then turned to me and said, "And Iris, honey, I'm so proud of how you've made it on your own, without any help from anyone. You've proven that hard work and determination can overcome any obstacle. Without any help from anyone." The words echoed in my head as I stared at the woman who'd been stealing from me for 12 years while praising me for my independence. The woman who'd watched me stress about rent, about student loans, about whether I could afford to fix my car, all while secretly managing an account with my name on it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the bank statement. I didn't plan what happened next. I didn't rehearse a dramatic confrontation. I simply placed the paper on the table next to my untouched plate and said, "Mom, I think you dropped this earlier." The silence was immediate and complete. Mom's face went from confused to horrified in about 3 seconds. Dad leaned forward to look at the paper, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock to something I'd never seen before, disgust. "What is this?" Dad's voice was quiet, dangerous. Saria was looking between the paper and Mom's face, clearly not understanding what was happening but sensing that something was very wrong. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice smaller than usual. Mom opened her mouth but no words came out. She looked like she was trying to solve a complex math problem in her head, probably calculating how much damage control was possible. I found my voice, and it was steadier than I expected. "It's a bank statement for an account that has my name on it but Mom's address. An account that's been receiving my inheritance from Grandma for 12 years. Money that I was told had stopped coming after she passed away." Dad grabbed the paper and studied it carefully. His background in finance made him a fast reader when it came to financial documents. I watched his face change as he processed the numbers, the dates, the transfer patterns. "Margaret," he said, using Mom's full name in a tone I'd never heard before. "What is this?" "I can explain," Mom started, but her voice cracked. "Please do," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "Please explain how my inheritance has been paying for Saria's lifestyle while I've been working myself to exhaustion thinking I had to make it completely on my own." Saria's face went pale. "What are you talking about? What inheritance? I don't understand what's happening." That's when I realized that Saria might not have known. The transfers could have been disguised as gifts from Mom and Dad, or loans, or who knows what other lies Mom had constructed to keep this secret. "Grandma left me money," I explained, looking at Saria. $1,500 a month to help me get established after college. I was told it stopped coming after she passed away, but it's been going into this account that Mom controls. And based on the transfer history, it looks like it's been going to you." Saria looked at Mom with an expression I'd never seen before. "Mom, is this true? Have you been giving me Iris's money?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Mom was opening and closing her mouth like a fish, clearly trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. "It's not that simple," she finally said. Saria needed help getting her career started. "Iris, you were always so independent, so determined to do things yourself." I thought. "You thought what?" Dad's voice was getting louder. "You thought you could steal from one daughter to give to the other without anyone finding out?" "It wasn't stealing." Mom's voice was defensive now. "It was redistributing. Saria had such potential, such talent. She just needed some financial support to really take off. And Iris was doing fine on her own." "Fine on my own?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice anymore. "Mom, I've been eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week for the past 5 years. I work overtime constantly just to make rent. I haven't been able to afford to go to the dentist in 2 years. I've been wearing the same winter coat since college because I can't afford a new one. That's not fine on my own. That's struggling while my inheritance pays for someone else's designer lifestyle. Saria was crying now. I didn't know, she kept saying. I swear I didn't know. Mom said it was from you and Dad, that you were investing in my future. $200,000, Dad said quietly, still staring at the bank statement. Margaret, you've stolen over $200,000 from our daughter. The number hit everyone like a physical blow. $200,000. It sounded even more massive when said out loud. I was going to tell her, Mom said desperately. Once Saria was established, once she was successful enough to pay it back, I was going to explain everything and make it right. When? I asked. When exactly were you going to tell me? After another 5 years? 10 years? When I'm 40 and still struggling because I never had the foundation I was supposed to have? How could you watch her struggle? Dad's voice was filled with disgust. How could you watch your own daughter work herself to exhaustion while you were secretly managing her inheritance? I thought it was for the best for both of them, Mom said, but even she didn't sound convinced anymore. That's when the real revelations started coming out. Once the initial shock wore off, Dad started asking more specific questions about the finances. It turned out that Mom had been managing more than just my inheritance. She'd been intercepting other money too, things that were supposed to be joint family decisions. The life insurance payout from Grandma's passing? That was supposed to be split between all the grandchildren, but Mom had redirected my portion to Saria as well. The savings bond that matured in my name? Same story. There had been a systematic redirection of money that was legally mine, all justified by Mom's belief that Saria needed it more. But the most heartbreaking revelation came when Dad started looking at their joint accounts. Mom had been using their shared money to supplement the stolen inheritance, which meant Dad had unknowingly been funding this deception too. His hard-earned money had been going to support a lie that made him complicit in his own daughter's financial abuse. I trusted you, Dad said to Mom, and I could see their marriage dissolving in real time. I trusted you to handle the family finances fairly, and you've been running a con game on our own children. Saria was having her own breakdown. I have to pay it back, she kept saying. I have to make this right. But I don't have it. I spent it. I spent all of it. That was another gut punch. The money wasn't just gone, it was spent. On what? On experiences, on things that couldn't be returned or reclaimed. On a lifestyle that had been built on a foundation of lies and stolen inheritance. The dinner that was supposed to celebrate Saria's success turned into a reckoning that would change our family forever. The perfectly arranged table with its elegant centerpieces became the backdrop for the most devastating conversation of our lives. But here's what's interesting about truth. Once it starts coming out, it's like a dam breaking. More details emerged over the next few hours. Mom hadn't just been stealing from me, she'd been lying to everyone about everyone. She'd told Dad that I didn't want help with money because I was too proud. She'd told me that Dad thought I should be more independent. She'd created a web of lies that kept everyone isolated from each other while she manipulated the family finances. The psychological manipulation was almost worse than the financial theft. She'd convinced me that I was the strong, independent daughter who didn't need help, while painting Saria as the fragile creative type who needed constant support. She'd created our family roles and then used those roles to justify her actions. Dad moved out that night. He couldn't stay in the same house with someone who'd been deceiving him for over a decade. The trust was completely broken, not just about money but about everything. How could he believe anything she said ever again? Saria and I had to completely rebuild our relationship. It wasn't her fault, but she'd been the beneficiary of a system that had harmed me for years. We had to figure out how to move forward when one of us had been unknowingly living off the other's inheritance. The legal aftermath was complicated. Getting the money back wasn't as simple as transferring it from one account to another. There were tax implications, legal questions about whether it constituted theft or mismanagement, and the reality that much of the money had been spent on experiences that couldn't be reclaimed. Mom tried to maintain that she'd acted out of love, that she'd been trying to help both her daughters in different ways. But love doesn't justify financial abuse. Love doesn't justify stealing someone's inheritance and then watching them struggle while praising them for their independence. The family business, which had been a source of pride for decades, became another casualty. Dad couldn't work with Mom anymore, and the stress of the legal and financial complications made it impossible to maintain business relationships. Everything had to be dissolved, divided, and rebuilt from scratch. Friends and extended family took sides. Some thought I was being too harsh, that families should work things out privately. Others were horrified by what Mom had done and couldn't understand how anyone could defend her actions. The family gatherings that had been the center of our social life for decades became impossible to navigate. But the most profound change was in my own self-perception. For 12 years, I'd internalized the message that I was less deserving of financial support than my sister. I'd believed that my struggles were character-building, that my independence was a virtue born of necessity. Learning that it had all been artificially constructed by theft and deception forced me to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about myself and my family. The money, when I finally got access to it, felt strange. It was mine, it had always been mine, but receiving it felt like winning a lawsuit rather than getting an inheritance. There was no joy in finally having financial security because it came with the knowledge of how much I'd suffered unnecessarily. I used some of it to pay off my student loans, something I'd been struggling with for years. I used some to get proper medical and dental care, things I'd been postponing because of cost. I bought a reliable car and moved to a better apartment. But every purchase felt bittersweet because I kept thinking about how different my life might have been if I'd had this support when I was supposed to have it. The relationship with Mom never recovered. How could it? She'd watched me struggle for years while secretly managing my inheritance. She'd accepted my gratitude for emotional support while stealing the financial support that was rightfully mine. She'd created a narrative about my strength and independence while systematically undermining my ability to build a stable life. Saria and I worked hard to rebuild our relationship, but it was never the same. There was always the underlying knowledge that her success had been built on my inheritance. She tried to pay me back, but influencer income is unpredictable, and much of what she'd spent had been on experiences and depreciating assets. The money was gone, and with it, the years of opportunity I'd lost. Dad and I grew closer through this experience. He was as much a victim of Mom's deception as I was, and we bonded over the shared experience of having our trust betrayed by someone we loved. He helped me navigate the legal and financial complexities of recovery, and his support became one of the few positive things to emerge from this disaster. The divorce was messy and public. Financial abuse is a form of domestic violence, and when lawyers got involved, more irregularities emerged. Mom had been manipulating family finances in ways that went beyond just my inheritance. There were credit cards opened in other people's names, investments made without proper authorization, and a pattern of financial dishonesty that stretched back years. What strikes me most about this whole experience is how completely it changed my understanding of family loyalty. I'd always believed that family meant supporting each other, even when it was difficult. But what Mom had done wasn't support, it was control. She'd used financial manipulation to shape our family dynamics according to her own vision, regardless of the cost to individual family members. The psychological impact lasted long after the financial issues were resolved. I had to rebuild my sense of self-worth from the ground up. For years, I'd believed that my struggles were evidence of my character, that my independence was a virtue that set me apart from my sister. Learning that it had all been artificially constructed by theft and lies forced me to question everything I thought I knew about myself. Therapy helped, but it took years to work through the feelings of betrayal, anger, and grief. I wasn't just mourning the money I'd lost, I was mourning the relationship with my mother that I'd never really had. The woman I'd loved and trusted had been running a con game on me for over a decade, and that knowledge changed everything. The most difficult part was accepting that some damage can't be undone. I'll never get back the years I spent working multiple jobs while my inheritance sat in an account I didn't know existed. I'll never get back the opportunities one missed because I couldn't afford to take risks. I'll never get back the sense of security I should have had during the crucial years when I was building my adult life. But I did learn something valuable about resilience and justice. Standing up for myself that Thanksgiving Day, confronting the lies and demanding answers, was the first time I'd ever really advocated for myself in a family context. It was terrifying and painful, but it was also empowering in a way I'd never experienced before. The story spread within our extended family and social circle, as these things do. Some people were sympathetic, others were uncomfortable with the level of family conflict it represented. But I learned that staying silent about injustice doesn't protect anyone, it just allows the injustice to continue. Today, 5 years later, I have a different relationship with money, family, and trust. I'm more careful about who I give access to my finances, more aware of the ways financial abuse can be disguised as love and support. I'm also more confident in my ability to advocate for myself when something doesn't feel right. The relationship with Saria improved gradually. She worked hard to understand how she'd benefited from a system that had harmed me, and she made genuine efforts to make amends. We'll never have the relationship we might have had if this hadn't happened, but we have an honest relationship built on truth rather than the manufactured dynamic our mother had created. Mom and I have no relationship now. She maintained until the end that she'd been trying to help both of us, that her actions had been motivated by love rather than control. But love doesn't justify financial abuse, and good intentions don't excuse harmful actions. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The most important lesson I learned is that family dynamics aren't natural or inevitable. They're constructed, often by the people with the most power in the system. My mother had used her position as the family financial manager to create a dynamic that served her vision of what our family should be, regardless of the cost to individual members. Understanding this gave me permission to construct my own relationships based on honesty, equity, and mutual respect. I didn't have to accept the roles I'd been assigned or the treatment I'd received just because it came from family. I could demand better, and when I didn't get it, I could walk away. The financial security I finally achieved felt different than I'd imagined it would. It wasn't the relief I'd expected because it came with the knowledge of how unnecessarily I'd suffered. But it did give me the freedom to make choices based on what I wanted rather than what I could afford, and that freedom was transformative. I think about this story often, especially when I hear about other families dealing with financial conflicts. Money isn't just about numbers on a bank statement, it's about power, control, and the ability to shape your own life. When someone manipulates your finances, they're manipulating your future, your opportunities, and your sense of self-worth. The bank statement that fell out of my mother's purse that Thanksgiving Day was just a piece of paper, but it represented 12 years of lies, theft, and manipulation. Finding it changed everything, not just about my financial situation but about my understanding of family, trust, and my own worth. If you're dealing with family financial conflicts, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. If you're being told you're too proud to accept help while watching others receive support, ask questions. If family members are managing money on your behalf, demand transparency. Financial abuse thrives in secrecy, and the only way to stop it is to bring it into the light. The most powerful thing I learned from this experience is that I don't have to accept treatment that harms me just because it comes from family. I have the right to honesty, fairness, and respect in all my relationships, including family relationships. When those standards aren't met, I have the right to protect myself, even if it means walking away from people I love. That Thanksgiving dinner destroyed our family as we knew it, but it also freed us from a system built on lies and manipulation. The truth was devastating, but it was also liberating. For the first time in my adult life, I could see my family clearly, without the distortion of financial manipulation and emotional control. The perfect family facade we'd maintained for so long was revealed to be exactly that, a facade. But underneath it, there was the possibility of real relationships built on honesty and mutual respect. Some of those relationships survived the truth, others didn't, but all of them became more authentic. Years later, I'm grateful for that accidentally opened bank statement. It gave me back my inheritance, yes, but more importantly, it gave me back my sense of self-worth and my right to fair treatment. It showed me that I didn't have to accept lies just because they came wrapped in love, and that standing up for myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. The family dinner that was supposed to celebrate success became the moment when real justice finally prevailed. It wasn't the justice I'd imagined, which would have been receiving my inheritance from the beginning, but it was the justice of truth, accountability, and the right to build relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation. If this story resonates with you, if you've experienced similar family dynamics or financial manipulation, I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments. How did you handle it? What did you learn? And if you found this story valuable, please subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics, financial justice, and the courage it takes to stand up for yourself even when it's difficult.